Fluff it. Hey everyone, how you doing? I have just got in from a gig. It's been a long weekend of gigging actually. I originally scheduled this one in for slightly earlier in the day, and then this gig came in and so I pushed it back. So I hope everyone who wanted to come has worked that out, that I put it back to this time. Welcome. We're going to be talking about bending today. Let me know if the sound and the video is okay. Say hello in the chat. I see we've got Leo, is it? We've got DJ Rick Mendez. Hey Rick, how you doing? Mikamo, we've got in New York City. Cool. And Samuel from Slovakia. Yeah, do let me know where you're coming from. So I've actually already done a Q&A on bending. I'll put that in the description afterwards if I remember. The reason I'm doing another one is because it's such a crucial topic and there's lots of stuff I didn't get to say in the last one. So I've had a lot more questions about bending that I didn't get a chance to answer and to talk about in the previous Q&A. So I'm going to try to go through as much today as possible. The first thing that I just want to hit straight away is talking about bending and tongue blocking, because I've had loads of questions. So I had an email from Paul Ray who said, can you bend whilst using the tongue blocking technique? Short answer, yes, but I've had lots of questions from other people asking how you do it. So I'm going to just describe how it feels to me when I'm tongue blocking and bending notes. So I'm going to use a C harp, by the way. So the analogy that always seems to make sense to me is an analogy with snooker or pool. You know, the tabletop game, and you're hitting balls with a cue, and if there isn't kind of stuff in the way, you just use your normal technique, absolutely fine. If there's kind of like it's an awkward angle, or there's some other balls on the table that you need to kind of get over in order to get to hit the ball you want, they call it hampered cueing. And it's kind of because it's a bit awkward to get there. Tongue blocking the bends feels a bit to me like hampered cueing. It's still the same technique. It's just that you, from this starting point of kind of, you know, a weird kind of angle, a weird mouth shape to begin with. Now, if you've started out as a beginner as a tongue blocker, and that's what you've done from the start, it's no more difficult. But I'm talking about if you're a lip purser and then you're trying tongue block the bends. So let's say the 4-draw. Now that's tongue blocked if I lip purse it. Now the key, the most important part of the bend, lip pursing, is what's happening with the tongue here. So this is the back of the tongue, this is the front of the tongue. If I go side on, instead of it being resting, it kind of humps up, kind of like that. Thanks for the donation, by the way, from Simfui, is it? And you're kind of doing this with your tongue like that, okay? If you're lip pursing, that's all good and well, right? And you can experiment with exactly the position to hold the bend, etc., etc. We'll talk more about bending technique in a minute. I just want to kind of apply it to the tongue blocking. If you're tongue blocking, obviously the tongue is stuck on the harmonica to begin with, so it's already on there. I'm still going to try the same kind of humping, curling thing. But I've got to maintain the tongue on the instrument, hence kind of hampered cueing. It's awkward, but I'm still doing the same thing. So it's on there. Let's say this kind of front of my tongue's stuck on there. I'm just sort of pushing it forwards and upwards, but making sure I'm still blocking those notes. So it feels quite, obviously it's forward towards the front, but I'm still putting that tension in there and trying to kind of curve that up. That's really all that's going on for me in terms of bending on the tongue block. The reason I think that it comes up so much is because so many of us lip purse and then we learn to tongue block. And I did that, and loads of people do that. If you do that, you're gonna be frustrated because you're gonna feel like a complete beginner again. You won't be able to get the note to move at first. A big part of it is the mindset. You've got to think like a beginner again. You've got to think, I've got to relearn this technique. I know it's so frustrating having to relearn something you've already done, but if you want the textures, the great things that tongue blocking gives you, you kind of have to be willing to go backwards to then go forwards. I have two courses that might help you. I have a tongue blocking course all about tongue blocking technique that talks a bit about bending with tongue blocking, but it's also about all the textures, that kind of thing. I also have a full course on bending, which goes into draw bending, blow bending, and hitting them as kind of just inflective textures and using them as melodic notes. So again, I'll after I've done this, I'll put in the description links to those courses. I'm going to write myself a note, otherwise I'm going to forget. Tongue block course, bending course, first bending Q&A. I'll put that in there. So I just wanted to get that out of the way, because it doesn't have to be as big a topic as people think. Of course, it takes time. Let's see who else we've got. We've got Desert Rat Dan. A little snow in the audio. Yeah, sorry, I haven't had a chance to set up my audio and any mic or anything for this. I'm just using the computer audio, so yeah, might not be great, but hopefully we'll get by. Leo says, I'm planning to buy another harmonica and I wanted to ask what key is the most useful. Yeah, maybe an A. And in terms of bending, an A, key of A is a good one, slightly lower, so you're going to get a bit of practice with the lower ones. Mikamo says, how to know that bending is in the right note. Okay, so let's talk about bending, what we're doing when we're bending. The first time you start to bend, you're just trying to get that note to move. You're just trying to get it to move. And that, if you can start to control that a bit, you can use those as kind of textures in and out of notes, That's kind of an inflective bend, where we're not picking a particular, we're not trying to pick a melodic note as such. And then you can do it downwards, that kind of thing. If you want to take bending beyond that to the point of using the bends as melodic notes, then we're going deeper there. And this is kind of what that question's asking about from Makamo. Because it's one thing to get it to move, it's another thing to hit a certain pitch. So when you bend, for example, if we take the 2 draw, that's a continuum. Okay, so that's like a sliding scale where the note is just kind of down and up. It goes until it kind of bottoms out, as I call it. Sometimes it just stops. You can't go any further, and then you can come back up. If you want to hit a particular tone along the way, then you need to know what you're aiming for. So on the 2 draw, the note will bend a tone, basically. So 2 half steps, 2 semitones, there or thereabouts. It'll go a bit further than that, which means that we can pick out 2 extra notes. We can pick out on a C harp the G flat and then the F. So 2 extra notes we can pick out. But you have to know exactly where they are, or well, I'm not saying they were perfectly in tune, but you have to know where you're aiming at in order to get them. Now, these days, you can just get a tuner on your phone. You can Google it. There's loads of websites with tuners, but make sure it's a chromatic tuner. So the one I use is called iStrobosoft. So this is really accurate. So it'll either tell me G sharp, G flat, or F sharp, and it'll say F sharp. And I'm trying to hold that when it hits the F sharp. So essentially I'm using this tuner as a reference point. And you're going to need a reference point to practice going down, bending down and holding, trying to be conscious, trying to be mindful of exactly what you're doing when you're getting to that point, and then maintaining that, because you've got to build up the muscle memory to know that's my G flat or F sharp, that's my F sharp note. And similarly with the F, the next one down, probably not perfectly in tune because I'm not looking at the tuner, but it's about trying to memorize, give yourself that muscle memory so that further down the line you'll be able to go to the harp and just like that hit the F. If you've not got a tuner, I mean, they're so easy to get hold of on the internet these days. You can get free apps. That iStrobosoft, I think, does cost something, but it's really good. You can get free ones, free website ones, you know. But if you haven't got one to hand, the next best thing is maybe to compare with another note on the instrument. So that 5 draw is the F, an octave up. So 5 draw is the same as 2 draw, full step bend. And you're trying to, they're an octave apart, but you're trying to kind of match those both F notes. Of course, you need to then know where those notes are on the rest of the instrument. So a kind of layout of notes for the harmonica is a good thing to have. Again, you can get hold of these online. Sorry, I'm sorry, I don't know how to say your name probably. Simfiwi, I'm not sure, says, I've figured out how to do the 2 draw bend and the 3 draw bend, but struggle with the 4 draw. Why do they feel so different? Okay, so this is a good question, and it's an interesting question because it's usually the other way around. Most people get the 4 hole first, and then it's when you go higher and when you go lower that get more difficult. So I'm not sure why you in particular are finding the lower ones easier, but in terms of the different holes, you've got to think about the physicality of what we're doing when we're bending notes. So I mentioned the tongue is kind of coming back, and what that's helping to do is it's kind of angling the air, but it's changing the cavity, it's changing the space in your mouth so that you can resonate different frequencies, and that's manipulating the reeds, you know. So with the bends that are kind of on higher harmonicas and higher notes on those harmonicas, it's going to be a bit more towards the front because you don't need as big an area for those slightly higher notes. With the lower bends on the lower harmonicas, it's kind of more to the back. You're creating more of this kind of this space here to resonate that lower note. Now, on a C harmonica, for example, that means that the 1 draw feels a bit more like heavy lifting. Whereas if I take the 6 draw, it feels a bit more towards the front. It's a bit tighter. It's less and it's more kind of a bit more slurpy, if you like, kind of slurping, you know, like sucking through a straw. That again is almost a continuum. Like the lower you go, the more exaggerated that big shape will get. The higher you go, the tighter and further up it'll go. So on the higher harmonicas and the highest notes on those, it's really, really tight and up the top. The lower harmonicas, low-tuned harmonicas, the lowest notes on them are really hard to bend because it's, you know, trying to create this sort of big thing in a tiny space. So your 4 draw compared to the 2 and 3 will need to be that little bit more forward and not, you know, if you're kind of going like that, you're going to miss the 4 draw because it's really quite subtle compared with the 2 and 3. So it's probably that you're kind of pulling back too far too quickly, And this leads me on to something else that I think is really important, is when you're practicing the bends, practice them really slowly. Don't I've talked about moving the tongue. Don't be doing this. You're never going to learn where the sweet spot is. It's all about finding that sweet spot. So just slow motion, slow motion, slow motion, and keep it with that four draw a little bit more towards the front rather than kind of way back. And also, if you've got different keys of harp, try the low, because you're struggling with the higher notes, try the lower ones, the four draw on your G, for example, as opposed to on your C. And that'll probably give you a sense of what you're aiming at. Leo says, try to look Bend It Better in the internet. They have there an amazing site that helps with bending. Yeah, there are good resources out there now. I used to use the Bendometer or Bendometer website. I don't know if that still exists or if there's an app for that, if they relaunched, but you can get these things where you can see on the screen the notes. The only thing that I think is maybe better with like that app that I was showing you is it's so precise, and comparing with other instruments can be really useful as well, because then you're getting away from it being a visual thing and it actually just being with your ears. So if you play an F on a piano, and again, you can Google like online keyboard or something and do it that way. Find an F note on the piano or whatever, and some tuners have a tone you can you play notes on it, and then try and match that, so it's ding, and then you're going ding, and although you and you can do it at the same time, although you're not seeing it, that can actually be really useful, because music isn't a visual thing. You need to learn to hear that. Joshy the doggo says hello. Hi, Joshy. Samuel says, where has it gone? It's hard for me to play 10 blow whole step bend. Yeah, so again, this, like the 10 blow, I'm not going to do it on my C because it's so high. I'm going to pick a G. I've got my case open here from my gig. I've just got a new case. What do you think of that? This is my new case, which was made by Blue X Labs in Italy, and it's custom made. He's amazing, Max. There, it's got little slots for chromatics and everything. I used to use a crappy little flight case. Yeah, I'm going to do a G harp. That's the 10 blow. You can hear how squeaky it is. I don't know how YouTube and how my computer have responded to such a squeaky noise, but it's really high even on a G. So on a C, for example, it's even higher. It's really compressed towards the front. And you're talking like the finest of margins. So this idea of being on slow motion, again, to find the sweet spot is more important than ever with that 10 blow, because millimeters out and you're gonna lose it. If you go too far, the note will just jump back up. If you don't go far enough, it's not going to go. So these are such fine margins. I mean, we're playing a tiny little instrument here, and the reeds at the top end are really small. I don't know if you ever did this at school, but I kind of need a table to do it. But did you ever play with a ruler and kind of, you sort of make noises with it off the end of the table, kind of like that, silly noises, and then you move it along, and maybe it's just me, I'm pretty sad. You move it along, and as you getting more of the ruler on the table and less of it off here, then the note will get higher, so you get boom. This is the high reed on a harmonica. The lower ones are bigger and heavier, so there's more to control, but more it's kind of easier to get hold of them. The highest ones, you're trying to kind of trying to pluck something that's really small and tight. So if you then transfer that to your skills, and the technique, then you're looking at kind of tiny differences that make a difference. So it's all about being conscious of what you're doing. Oh, I had a comment this week. I think the name was TL Visser, I think, on YouTube, saying, "Do you need to know bending if you want to be good?" Short answer, no. I mean, define good. You can play some really cool stuff without bends. It's just a technique that helps you with extra textures and then extra tones. So if you want to use those, then it's useful. I mean, a lot of things don't need it. If you're playing a kind of a fast kind of jig or something, and so on, that sort of thing, although you could put a bend in somewhere, it doesn't need it. And there are loads of sweet melodies. I mean, if you play When the Saint, so a lot of more folky style stuff, you might use less bending, and there are loads of melodies you could pick out on the harmonica that don't use bends. The thing that bending gives you is it helps you, as I say, one with the textures. I mean, if you want to play blues, you're going to be limited if you can't bend, because you won't get those bending sounds. You won't get, that's such a distinctive part of the style of the genre of music that there'll be something missing in terms of that. But the other thing it does is the extra notes you can pick out. So sometimes you'll find there's a melody you want to play with one missing note on the harmonica. The way the harmonica is laid out, it doesn't have the note. But if you can bend, you can get that note, and that fills in the gap, and it means you can play the tune. The only alternative to that, if to bending, would be to miss the note out or play a chromatic that has all the notes. So then you don't have that problem. I hope that makes sense. What else have we got? Nathan Turner asked me, I can bend 4 and 5 with a tongue block, but not 3. Should I be pursing for a good 3-draw bend, or is it just practice? It's really about personal, you yourself, your personal choice. So a lot of players tongue block hold 3 or 4 upwards. And that's because up there, the textures start to be really useful. You can slap, you can do kind of flutters and sweeps, octaves, all these different textures, which tongue blocking helps with. Holes 1 and 2 and 3, those textures aren't going to be as useful. So if you would prefer to lip purse down there, that's fine. And some people do that. And then hole 3 or 4 is the switchover hole, if you like. So you could lip purse holes 1, 2, and 3 if you're confident with those bends. The only thing is, you then need to get used to the transition from hole 3 to 4, for example, if that's where you're going to switch your mouth shape to a tongue block. So three draw, 4 blow. So you've got to get used to that kind of, it's like a quick little change. But that is something people do. Other people, I mean, myself, I've just got used to doing the draw bends with a tongue block, as I mentioned earlier. There's no shame in being what I call a mouth-shaped mongrel, doing a bit of both, if that helps you. What have we got here? We've got Ananda, I think it is, who Ananda Arju or are you emailed me saying, hope you're doing well. I'm a newbie and I'm trying to bend notes but not able to do this. When I tried to bend, the sound was peculiar. How to improve this? Another thing, on my Lee Oscar harmonica, I can't draw to draw, maybe because of my bad technique. Yeah, okay. So I'll try and address both those things, because the two draw thing is kind of to do with bending. So let's talk about the two draw. A lot of beginners think there's a problem with the two draw. They'll play it and get this sort of, you know, horrible sound. What they're actually doing is bending when they're not trying to. So they're doing kind of a sort of a dodgy version of a bend. And that's because there's tension, and the tongue might be tense as well and maybe out of position. So in order to play the two draw natural, unbent, no bends at all, it's so important to be relaxed. My jaw is relaxed, it's quite low. My tongue is resting, just resting, you know, no tension in it at all. And it's kind of a if you find that it's not playing, the tendency is to pull harder, and that just makes it worse. So you've actually got to let all of that out and allow the instrument to do what it wants to do, and just let that reed vibrate. Okay. So that's often something beginners do without knowing it, and then the amount of times that they'll, you know, someone will send it back to the shop even saying it's broken, and it's actually just down to that tension. You know, I've seen it so many times with students over the years. The other part of the question was, when you tried, the bend was peculiar. Yeah, the sound, bends don't sound good at first. It's very hard to hone them to improve them to the point where they sound sweet. Okay, I mean, I've been bending notes for 15 years, and you can still, you know, if I play the two draw and then I play the bend, you can hear that that's a bend. Okay, it's not a lovely sweet tone. I'm still working at controlling the tendency to get that foghorn sound with a bend. And it's all about, again, what mechanical process, as it were, what physical process is producing the bend. So when we first start to bend, it can feel like a monumental effort. You know, you're to get the note to move. And it's about reducing that the noise, if you like. I don't mean actually noise at this point, but I mean the kind of the excess, the extra stuff that's going on that isn't needed, isn't necessary, and is actually maybe even getting in your way. So if you're getting really tense, if you're kind of pulling the air really hard, then it's going to be a bit. So you've got to remember that the key thing is what's going on internally here with your tongue and the kind of space there in the mouth. That is what is going to determine the bend. That's what's going to produce that bend. So you can bend with the slightest whisper. It's really gentle. You know, I could keep that note going because it's really gentle. So almost always the problem at first is that forcing the note, and it's trying to focus the energy on what's happening in your mouth and with your tongue, rather than the kind of the air pulling, yanking that air inwards and tensing up and you know, with all your might. I have a friend who, he has a YouTube channel teaching tennis lessons, and he was saying how when you learn a technique, I don't know why I'm using all the sports analogies this evening. When you learn a new technique, this is a case with anything, but let's say you're learning to play backhands when you're playing tennis. The tendency when you're not, your skill level doesn't match what you're attempting to do, tendency is to tense up and you kind of, with all your might, go for it. When actually, watch someone like Roger Federer, his backhand is so strong but so relaxed. And that's because he's worked on that process of relaxation and notched his kind of skill level up bit by bit to the point where there's no excess tension, because that tension wouldn't help. So a lot of it is this kind of mental thing, really, of sort of constantly reminding yourself that you can relax, because the tension is not going to help you. What else have we got in the chat here? What else have I missed? Mr. Ventura says, can you play slow blues in a C harmonica? Yes, you can. Obviously not about bending. I'm trying to keep the questions to bending. I am going to do more of these Q&As, I hope, over the coming months. I've been picking different topics. Do, you know, email me with your ideas for topics, you know, different techniques and stuff we can look at. Vasil, I think it is, Trushchak, sorry for not being able to say your name, says, hi, sorry for being late. My question is about tongue blocking half step bends. I hit 2 and 3 hole full step very easily, but half step bends are very hard. How to gain better control? Yeah, I mean, it's worth, Vasil, going back to the start of the video once this is over, because I did talk about tongue blocking, and I've also talked about the different holes and where they, you know, how they feel. The half step bends, especially when you progress, this is not just tongue blocking, this is lip pursing. When you progress as a player and your bending improves, those half step bends that might have felt at first like a huge effort, you suddenly realize they're really subtle. It's almost just a little flick. It's almost just like, just a little slurp. And you realize then that in order to get that, it doesn't matter which hole it is, but the half step bend, in this case on the 4, it really doesn't take much. Whereas at first you were kind of, as I say, you know, doing that. So it's really just a, and it's very close to your natural shape. Compared with, you know, the lower bends. So it's probably because your technique is improved on, say, 2 and, you know, the lower bends, you're probably doing too much. You need to think, actually, this is more subtle than I'm trying to do. Desert Rat Dan says it sounds good. Just a little crunching. This is the first live I've attended. I appreciate it. You're very welcome, Desert Rat Dan. Welcome for being here. What else do we need? Yeah, someone said, where have I missed it? Ananda says we need very detailed, presumably you mean like very detailed description about bending and tongue blocking. As I say, for me, it in a way I'm almost doing less than with a lip purse, because my tongue's there, I'm just kind of pushing it forward a little, but it's already on there. Whereas when you're lip pursing, there's this kind of big move backwards, which is almost more of a, you're kind of doing more than you are with the lip purse. But I think more than the, you know, there isn't really much more in terms of the technique. I don't think that can be said. Certainly, I can't think of any other way of describing that technique itself. The important thing is taking it slowly and experimenting, and again the mentality of thinking like a beginner again, because it's not going to happen overnight, and sadly this is just the way it is. Let me see what else I've got in the chat. I've got a few more questions that came in by email as well, so I'll get onto those. If you're enjoying it and you want to donate, there's a link in the description. It's just LearnTheHarmonica.com/donate. I would really appreciate it. It helps me to pay for my editing for my YouTube videos and keep making those. Yeah, so that would be great if you're able to. Every little helps. Credit card, debit card, PayPal, all accepted. Let me see. I've got loads of stuff in the chat. Let me just see what I have missed. Okay. Let me see. Dan says subtle is probably the most important word in bending. Breath control is my problem, and subtle might help. But yeah, it's. I mean, at the first, it does feel huge, but then you really realize you're making small movements. 53N says case is sexy. Always love that deep red. Yeah, I love that thing. The only thing is I'm a bit scared of taking it out to gig because I love it so much. It needs some scratches and stuff on it, and then I'll feel a bit better about it. Mark Air says hi, Liam up the cobblers. Hey Mark, good to see you. Vasil says I played with a ruler too. Yeah, I'm glad it wasn't just me. 53N says not with a ruler, but I've done the same with those plastic sticks you get with vending machine coffee. Oh yeah, I know what you mean. What are they? Why can't they give you a spoon? They're so rubbish. Let's see what we have here. Okay. This is a good question. Herbivore says, do you consider overblows and overdraws the next level of bends because they also give you extra notes or something different? Okay, so in my head, there's something different in that they mechanically on the instrument there's a slightly different thing happening, and in terms of where the notes come out there's a different thing happening, but I do consider them similar in certain ways, so I'll talk about that in a minute. But the way that I consider overbends, so overblows and overdraws, different is what you're doing. If you play an overblow, 6 overblow for example, you're choking the blow reed in order to get the draw reed to vibrate at a different frequency from usual, which is not quite what you're doing when you're bending. With a bend, you're it's the angle of the air means that you're able to get a pitch which is between the two, the blow and the draw reed pitches. With an overblow, it's that choking mechanism, and then you get a note that's above. So on the 6th blow, you're getting the B flat, which is a half step up from the 6th draw. So you're actually getting this note that's over the normal note. So it's different in that sense. In terms of technique, it can be similar. So it's good to learn draw bending and blow bending first, and then maybe move on to overblows and overdraws. And the reason I say that is because, well, one, the bends, the draw bends and blow bends will give you more notes. So you may as well learn the stuff that is going to give you more notes. But 2, you can then apply your bending technique to the overbending. 3, overbends are less stable. They're harder to maintain, and sometimes, well, almost always it helps to do a bit of maintenance and setup on the instrument to make them happen and make them play better. So they can be, have more problems attached to them. But in a sense, they're the next type of bending, if you like, because what they do is fill in the missing gaps that still remain after you've learned to bend extra notes. So bending will give you missing notes, and then overbending so overblowing and overdrawing will give you the rest of the missing notes, so that in the end, you can play a chromatic scale. I've not set this harp up, so you might not want to do it. So that's normal notes, bends, and overbends. And that's the chromatic scale in the middle of the harp. So it fills in those gaps nicely to finish it off. What else do we have here? Samuel says, can you bend notes on the chromatic harmonica? And then ABC says, chromatic harp isn't tight enough to bend, but it's possible on side-on, not slider. Michael says it's lagging. Sorry, not sure what to do about it. Yeah, is what it is. I also had an email, I think, about the chromatic. Let me see. Oh yeah, so it's from Vintage Music got in touch with me and said, I have a normal harmonica and a larger chromatic harmonica, and I might have been practicing bending and I've been practicing bending on both. So my question is it normal that I find it easier to get a cleaner and better bend on the chromatic than on the classic harmonica, presuming you mean diatonic? No, I don't think it's necessarily normal. In answer to Samuel, you can get notes to bend on the chromatic, but not in the same way. Chromatic harmonicas have valves in them which affect that ability to manipulate the draw reed through the blow, kind of chamber. But you can make notes move. I mean, if I those notes are moving slightly. But it's a bit like, I mean, there are people who can bend notes on a chromatic better than me, but essentially what I'm doing there is like on the 5 draw on a diatonic, you can't get an extra, or I'm not getting an extra. I can't get a half step bend on there. It's kind of a quarter tone or microtone. And the reason is when you're bending, this is on the diatonic, you can get the missing pitch, if you like, the missing tones between the blow reed and the draw reed. So on the 4 draw, there's a half step kind of gap there because you've got C on the blow and D on the draw. So you can get the D flat / C sharp. You can get that middle note. On the 5 hole, the blow is an E and the draw is an F. Now, on a piano, they sit next to each other. There's no note between them. So there's no missing note for me to get. So it's a kind of micro bend. Inflective textural bend. On the chromatic, that was all I was doing on that, just kind of micro bends. Depending on how the chromatic's set up and what you're doing in terms of the kind of the wind savers and all that kind of thing, you can get bends of a certain type. It's not something I do. I don't really play chromatic. I just like them. But they still scare me a bit. So to be honest, I'm not an expert when it comes to chromatic. But sure, after a very long answer, my short answer is yes, it's possible to bend, but it's not the same. Don't go trying to do the bends you are on your diatonic on the chromatic, because you'll probably end up just sending it out of tune. Clay Dobbins says, I can bend, but that's okay. The Lee Oscar is the easiest to bend, especially in comparison to the Marine Band. Yeah, that's interesting. What do other people think about easiest harps to bend? I would certainly say if you're trying to bend notes on the cheapest harmonica out there, if you've got like a teach yourself book with a free harmonica and you're trying to bend that harmonica, it's going to be really difficult because it's just not well made. They're not especially well made. It's going to be difficult for you to find to manipulate those reeds. So it's worth paying a little bit more. I mean, I play a lot of special 20s, Hohner special 20s. Anything that costs that kind of amount of money, then that's going to be okay. You don't have to spend a fortune. You certainly don't need top of the range, but mid-range sort of harps will be okay. Jerry says, "Look, it's that Tomlin lookalike." Yeah, you cheeky bastard. Oh, and Jerry, you emailed me, didn't you, saying this is a while ago. Oh no, it was a comment ages ago about needing a session on warbles with bends. Yeah, so combining bends with other techniques is really cool. And one of the things you can do is bend a warble. So if you're 4 and 5 draw warble, if you bend those, then it, you know, you get a pretty cool sound. You can bend into the warble, kind of like that. Now, I want to distinguish two different aspects of this. That second thing I did, bending in, that can be as simple as just bending that 4 draw, releasing it, and then playing the warble. If you do that fast, then you get that bending sound at the start. You're not actually having to bend the warble itself, but you can bend the warble itself. So okay, and really it's just applying my normal bending technique that I would on a single note, but I'm obviously moving the harp or moving my head to produce the warble, but I'm doing the same thing. It's the same kind of bending technique. In that case, on the 4 and 5 draw, obviously the 4 will bend further than the 5. So there is this imbalance between the two where maybe if you pull too hard, the 5 draw might not pull too hard, but try and bend too far, the 5 draw might not like it, whereas the 4 draw would do it. So I tend to do them, you know, not try and send them too far, because then you get this imbalance. But there isn't that much to it. I mean, obviously with everything you can start really slowly. It sounds horrible. It's like that. What do they call that when something goes, you know, like a police car or an ambulance goes past? Is it the Doppler effect or something? When the sound kind of changes when it goes off into the distance, like it sounds like the pitch changes, even though obviously it's not changing, but the perception of it, it's like that. It's horrible. But yeah, I mean, to be honest, Jerry, I'm sorry, that's probably not a very good answer. But it's just the same technique. It's just I happen to be moving left and right. Don't be intimidated by it. Okay, what else do we have? 53N says, I know being good is subjective, but would you say knowing how to bend on the higher notes is important for playing blues? I still haven't gotten around to learning, but I never had you know, the need for them. Yeah, probably not. As a blues player, they're not used as often. You hear that, you know, the big like song ending kind of, that kind of, you know, the 10 blow full step bend is sometimes used as a da-da sort of thing. Yeah, I mean, they're not used that often. First position, they're quite useful. You know, you can play some sweet blues stuff. And oh, it is the Doppler effect. Oh, good. I'm not going crazy. So those kind of stuff at the top end for playing first position stuff is used quite a lot, like a slow blues, where you play down the bottom end. Is an A harp, and then the top end you know, that kind of stuff, which I'm using bends. Otherwise, you just get, you know, which is not very bluesy. So it's useful for that. The draw bends you'll use a lot more. If you want to listen to some awesome bending and control of those high notes, then check out Mitch Kashmar. He's one of my favorite harp players, and he plays some beautiful, not just bends, but vibrato at that top end. But guess he's better than that. Sweet vibrato on those high notes. He's awesome. Let's see. What else we have? Leo says, I know it's possible to play the A minor scale on a C harmonica using the middle and upper parts of the harmonica, but is it somehow possible to play the A minor scale on the lower notes of the harmonica? Yeah, so I mean, it's just the note arrangements on the harmonica. I'm just going to take something off. I've got a notice board here with this chart that I created of all the different keys of harmonica and the notes available. So I'll show you the C harp here. The blue notes are draw bends, and the blue notes up here are the blow bends. The red ones are overblows and overdraws. So there's the blue ones we're paying attention to when we're talking about bending. In terms of note selection, if you've got those, well, if you've got the bends and the overbends, you can play any scale you like, you know, as long within that range of 3 octaves. And certainly, if you're talking just about the, you know, playing the relative minor scale, where you're just using the same notes as the C scale, but starting on A, then yes, down the lower end, you've got the A note there. So you could start on that 3 draw full step bend and then just go up 3 draw, 4 blow, 4 draw, 5 blow, 5 draw, 6 blow, 6 draw. So I'm assuming that's what you meant. I think I get what you meant. So it's just that full step bend on 3. That is a common one, that note, the 3 draw full step bend, a common note that you'll find is missing when you're trying to play things. And then bending can help with that by adding that note. Because it's part of the major scale on the instrument. So if you're trying to play, you know, if I take When the Saints again, in the middle of the harp, all good. If you do it down the bottom end, sorry, that's the 2 draw bend, not the 3 draw bend. But if you're trying to play the major scale, in second position, then that note's missing. You know, you need that major pentatonic. So it's really useful for that. It's useful if you're trying to play, if I take the major scale first position. That note is often one that you find, oh, I need that note. You'll play the whole song like in the middle of the harmonica, and it jumps down for that one note at one point in the song. And if you can't bend, you can't play it. One way of getting around that is through harmonicas that are tuned slightly differently to this. So Paddy Richter tunings are one where the 3 blow is retuned to that 8 note, that A note, the 3 draw full step bend. So you don't need to bend to get it. Similarly, Lioska does harps where that note's retuned, but also the 5 draw is a half step up, so you don't need to overblow to get the major 7th. So you can get around problems, but every time you change a note, you're then missing the note that you've changed to that new note. So it's, you know, short of having a chromatic harmonica, you know, there'll still be limits. Philip says, hi Liam, love yours and Tomlin's videos. Great to catch you live. Cheers, Philip. I'm glad you know the difference between me and Tomlin. People think we're the same person, not sure why. Herbivore says that you find the special 20 easiest. Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to easiest thing to do things on harmonica, there's maybe there's the personal aspect to it. So you just get used to a certain make and model. I've got used to special 20s. Now, it's not that I think they're definitively the best harp. I think they're good. Good harps are good for beginners, but you just get used to them. Okay, what else do we have? Have I missed anything? Ed Dodgen says, I'm relatively new and your YouTube videos have been tremendous help. Cheers, Ed. That's nice to hear. I think I've got all our emails done. Sorry if I missed any questions in the chat. I think I might have to leave it there. We're getting on for an hour. Yeah, again, if you'd like to donate just to help me keep making YouTube videos, I'd appreciate it. There's a link, LearnTheHarmonica.com/donate. You can use a credit card, debit card, PayPal. I hope this has filled in some of the gaps from last time. There's a lot more. I did a bit more about the basics of bending technique, kind of breaking it down, I think, if I can remember rightly, in the last one. So again, I'll put in the description afterwards the link to the first Q&A on bending that I did, and hopefully if you combine those together, they'll help you. I do have a full bending course, which again, I'll link it, and if you're on my mailing list, I'll send out an email with all of the links as well. I think that's it. So thank you for joining me for this one, and been good to see a lot of familiar faces, or familiar names rather, in the chat. Cheers for the tip, Jerry. You're a good man. Nice to see you. And yeah, to everyone, have a nice evening or morning or whatever time it is there. And I hope to see you again soon. Cheers.